Give me a cue. Okay. One thing that's difficult to talk about is giving, especially preachers, because preachers live off of money that's given to the church and so on, and so we have a tendency not to talk about that. However, I was over in Russia about 2005, and we were talking at a meal, and we were just kind of talking about things, and I asked him, I said, what do you think of the church? And this one guy said, well, the church is a big, expensive building with gold inside, and in front of the door is a man in a black robe with his hand out. And that's kind of what we think about giving, especially if you come to the church as an adult believer. It's kind of difficult because of the fact that you haven't had training as a child to give. Your mother gives you a quarter, and you're supposed to put it in a plate, and when it goes by, and she passes you a plate, and you're going to pass on, she says, put your money in the plate, and you won't do it, and she finally takes your hand and shakes it out, that kind of thing. Or as an adult, if you come as an adult and you start to give, it's rather difficult to say, well, how much am I going to give? What do I think is right in giving? And it's a sort of a touchy, sore subject, because this is your money, and why in the world should we be giving it? And so we're going to try to address these questions today. And of course, about that church description that was given in Russia, really that's truly what it is. You go in there and you even have to pay for a candle to be able to light, and when you light a candle, it's a prayer to God and so on. And none of that stuff is biblical, unfortunately. They do sing without instrumental music there, and because it's a cathedral, the music is just beautiful. The singing is just beautiful to hear. But that's about as close as they get. Got icons everywhere, and unfortunately, there's not even whole Bibles for people to read, but portions that priests said, this is what you need to know. Isn't that fascinating? Here's what you need to know. Instead of you being able to go and search the scriptures for yourself to be able to know what's right and what's wrong, it's kind of fascinating. So let's take a look at the rules for giving. And God gives us this in 2 Corinthians, not 2 Chronicles. I kind of got hung up on Chronicles because of this morning. And it's 2 Corinthians chapter 9 and verse 7. Let's see what it says. Each man should give what he decided in his heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, because God loves a cheerful giver. Now, here's the rules of how you're to give. And I want you to think for a moment about the word tithing. And tithing was to give of your first tenth of your income. Now, this is not in the New Testament. This is Old Testament. And they would even give a tenth of wherever their income was, and of their spices and all kinds of things that they would give. We do not have command for tithing today, because the rules are not written on paper for us to have to follow these rules and you're in like Flynn. But rather, they're written on the heart. And we are thinking about how we're to think, how we're to feel when we give, and so on. And so what he tells us, the first thing you need to do is decide in your heart. So you have to take a look into yourself and decide how much you're going to give. You want to be able to give what is right within your budget and what is right within yourself to be able to give. Because you don't want to feel guilty about taking from your family. And let me tell you something, there are people who give to the church and they don't have it to give. And in reality, they steal it from their electric man or from whatever bills that they owe that they put back in order to look good because they're giving a certain amount. That's one thing I like about how we use a box back there in the back, although it is different from many other churches because they'll use a plate that's passed or something like that. We have a box, and so you can go back there and quietly give it yourself. And some people even send in a certain amount that they've decided they're going to give, and they'll have a letter that comes in the mail that is their check, and it's written by the bank, comes here automatically because they set it up. And there are things that you can do like that. Now, I like to write a check and I like to give it in that fashion. I usually give it the first of the month simply because it's easier on my mind to not forget, not to forget, and the first month rolls around, I know that I need to give to the church. And here's what you've got to do. You've got to choose what amount you're going to give. Now, I remember going to this little bitty church one time out in the middle of a pasture, and there was a farmer that came, and he was kind of a short guy, but he was stocky, and he had these big gnarled hands from working in the dirt. Dirt will change the way your hands look. And anyway, he would come time for the plate to be passed, and he'd reach in his pocket and he'd pull out a water bill, and he'd pull out a $1 bill and set it in the plate, And that's what he has chosen was his amount to give and to feel good about the fact they gave. Well, the problem with that was that he was giving, but he wasn't wanting to give, and so he was having trouble with that. What we want to do is we want to set apart a portion of what we know we will get for the purpose of giving. And don't forget, you're giving to the local church. Now, this doesn't mean that you're not giving in other areas. And so you have to decide, well, I'm going to give $100, and so how much do I need to make sure that the church is aware that they're going to get from me on a regular basis every month? And so you may give $60, $70 or whatever of that $100, and you may have a special project that you're doing, a missionary you're supporting, or a particular home, orphanage, or something of that nature, or maybe you give to a widow that doesn't have any family. You buy groceries and you take it over there. That's all part of giving, and you've decided in your heart what it is you're going to give. As far as many people, they have a certain amount that they give to, let's say, like what's the name of that place in the rock, over in the Colorado?
Mountain States.
Yeah, Mountain States Children's Home, and you can set it up online where it just goes there automatically, and when it does, you know that you have supported them, and they know they can count on your money coming in every week. And same here, our treasurer knows, well, I'm going to have X number of dollars coming in here. We can pay the electric bill, the gas bill, which go up. That's why we meet in here instead of in the big auditorium, because the prices of our utilities have gone up so much, it almost makes the big auditorium prohibitive. And so we have to make sure that we choose how much we're going to give. How are we going to determine that amount? And there may be other things that happen that you decide, well, I'm going to give this, or I'm going to fill this need. Maybe you we make coffee every single time we get together. Okay, well, I'm gonna buy extra coffee and put it in when I see it's going low, or, you wanna buy gasoline for the mowers, or anything like that. You know, any little thing that you see that you say, well, this needs to be done here, because this is what it takes for us to not only gather together, but also to present a front to the community that we are a church, and that we are taking and saying this is the way to heaven. And so that requires that our yards be mowed, and that we have plants put out. You know, some beautiful tulips and stuff like that that are out front. And those people may have given the money for that, and the time it takes to plant those and weed those. My wife we first got our house in Delaware, and we I'd made a little picket fence out of some old fencing I'd found, and I cut the good parts out and painted it up and put it up, and she said, oh, and I thought, well, I'll just make it where I can mow along real nice and easy. Well, before I knew it, she had 5 or 6 gardens out there with flowers going in. Well, that just meant we had to weed them up to things. I'm thinking about mowing, and this would be real easy for me to mow, you know, with that picket fence there, and people wouldn't run off on the grass. Well, you've got to do the same thing with the church, and you've got to do this with the the total of what you're going to give, and you might want to portion it out to certain areas. You know, we give to Dr. Hubert over there in Chennai, India, and I was putting the two words together. And Vanzi and I also give to him the same amount the church gives. And you may want to give to the Mountain Home, or you may want to give to disaster relief. And each person has a pull towards what they want to give to. Don't forget your local church. This is where you are, and this is what's making an impact here. And so determine how much you're going to give to that. And then don't be reluctant or under compulsion. And what that means is you've got to learn the art of letting go. You've got to let go of the money that you give. You know, there are certain people we don't give money to. When we give money to people who have made money or have money coming in, but they have managed it poorly, we're not helping them, because when we give them money, they're just going to throw it away on something. I was in this church one time, and there was a guy there. He had always had trouble with his bills, and we would give him money to pay the bills, and then we'd find out that, well, because we had paid the bills, he had more money to drink on. You know, so you've got to be aware of that, be wary of that, and to think about how you're giving and what you're giving, whether it's helping the person or not. And so if they're just going to blow your money, then there's no point in you even giving it to them and helping them at all. Wait until they're destitute and in really need, and then you can help them by showing them how to handle their money and so on, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But you have to come to a point where you let go of the money. You're not going to be reluctant about it. You know, like somebody is sitting there, they pass the plate, and you're trying to put the money in the plate, and finally they snatch it out of your hand and throw it in there for you, you know. Well, that's not the way you want to be. This is something you've decided that you're going to do. It's not a specific amount, like we were talking about with the tithing. It's not a specific amount. It is you deciding what you're going to take of your family income and how you're going to live and be able to utilize that for for God and for the work that you think that the church does here and for the things that you want to accomplish out there in the world. Where's your heart? What's calling you? What's compelling you to do it? And also not out of compulsion, because you think, well, I gotta give something. I don't want to give it, but I got to give it. And let me tell you, if I don't give, if I pass the plate and I don't give, everybody's going to see I didn't pass the plate. You know, and so I passed the plate and didn't put anything in it, so I've got to give something. So you don't want to give because you're reluctant. You also don't want to give because you feel like you have to. Does that make sense? So you're giving because it is something you have chosen and decided to do. It's on your budget list. It's one of the things you do. It's who you are. You've learned the art of letting go of some of your money. And because of that, God said He loves a cheerful giver. He loves someone who enjoys giving to Him. And why would He do that? Don't you know that when you wake up in the morning and you look across the way, we always have a great view here. We can look back here to the north and the river's down there. And because of that, they'll have fog sometimes over the river and or rain or whatever. And so we always see in the springtime rainbows over here. You can usually see sometimes 2 or 3 a day over there, and they're just gorgeous. Okay, when you're standing there and you look and man, the blossoms are popping out, the trees are greening, the stupid cottonwood trees are dropping stuff all over your car, you know, like that good stuff. Okay, so you realize God's giving constantly to you, whether you appreciate it or not. And so we must be people of God, people who think like God thinks. And we start to do that where we are a cheerful giver. We're somebody who's happy to give. We're somebody who's excited. You know, when I look at a field of wheat, I always think about the story of Boaz and how faithful he was to when he would go to gather his wheat. They would always leave the corners for the widows and orphans. And so when he saw that there was a beautiful widow out there and they were in need, he told his men, leave even more for them. In fact, go ahead and gather, but leave it for them. And so he was caring about people and worrying about them. We think about orphans and people who unfortunately are raised in foster care, and then at the end of that foster care at 18, they're just pushed out, and they don't know where to go or what to do, and they really haven't had an idea of what home life is. They've never had a mother who was wanting to hold them because they got hurt. They never had someone who cried over them. And so here they are on their own. So if you care about that, and you care about the way that the what do they call them, house parents care for their children. I don't know whether you've ever been to any of the orphan homes around. There's some down in Texas. There's the Medina homes and so on. Went down there, and it's kind of interesting. They've got the big fat kitchen, you know, and a big living room, and then they got 2 big bedrooms, and in one bedroom they had 6 girls, and the other bedroom they had 5 boys, and the house parents weren't stupid. Their room is right between them. And so they were monitoring the traffic between the 2 rooms, and the boys weren't allowed in the girls' room, and the girls weren't allowed in the boys' room. And yet they came and they had a mother and they had a father, and because they had children, they could see the dynamics of a normal, healthy family relationship. So that when they were able to get ready to go out into the world and find someone that they would fall in love with, they would be able to understand how it would be to raise a child. You know, many times out there in this world, did we get dimmer in here? Yeah. Many times out there in this world, the children, women especially, will have a child, so they'll have somebody to love, and somebody that loves them. But you know what? That child one day will grow up and leave, and they won't be with them anymore. And they're not married. They're just having a child because they're wanting to have someone to love. The reality is, and how they should understand it, is that they need to find somebody with a lot of kinsmanship to them in things that they like, and dedicate themselves to that person so that they can be have someone who loves them, and then have children and bring them into that loving union between a man and a wife. And that child can look and see them loving each other and kissing on each other and taking the child and pulling them away and sitting close to the parents. I remember this one church I went, and there was a couple that had 4 children, and they would not let the children sit between between their spouse, and so they would keep them on the outsides, and they wouldn't interrupt the fact that they loved each other and they thought well of each other. So God loves a cheerful giver. God loves someone who is planned and prepared to give and has set this money aside. He loves someone who is happy to help others. How important this is for us to be able to understand. Okay, then the second part we're going to look at on this is, how do you give? Let me tell you, it requires hard work. Let's look what it says over in Acts 20, chapter 20, and see what he tells us today. In verses 33 through 35. I have not coveted anyone's silver or gold or clothing. You know, that was a big deal, clothing. You yourselves know that these hands of mine have supplied my own needs and the needs of my companions. In everything I did, I showed you that by this kind of hard work we must help the weak, remembering the words of the Lord himself said, it is more blessed to give than to receive. What did he say? He said, make sure that you don't envy, that you're not greedy for what other people achieve. And that means you have to be content with who you are and what you're capable of building. Now let me tell you something, there are people out there who can buy a used car for $400, turn around and sell it for $800, and you do the same thing and you wind up selling a $400 car for $300. Because they're gifted with the ability to do that. You're not gifted with that. Your gifts are in other areas. And so you take your gifts and you don't worry about the fact that your house isn't as big, or that your car isn't as new, or that your clothes aren't as great as other people. You know, Paul said here, we weren't concerned about clothing. Well, clothing was an important thing in the Jewish era, because clothing meant you had status, and the more richer the clothing was, the greater the status you had. And if you remember watching the movies, The Chosen One, and the priests or the rabbis and the Republicans and all those people, they would have different qualities of clothing. Even the tax collector would have better clothing than the ones he was collecting taxes from, which he was collecting taxes. And so clothing meant something great. Well, it still does. We see people out there who buy shoes that cost $2,000 so they can have the latest tennis shoes. I don't think they call them tennis shoes anymore. Well, they would say the latest kicks. And because they want to have that, or they're wearing a sweatsuit and you think, man, goodness, you look so sloppy. Oh no, this is Nike, and man, Nike's a lot more expensive than Jordan, that kind of stuff. And who's wearing Tommy Hilfiger, nowadays, and stuff like that. And Ralph Lauren, he's stuck in the back seat, Everybody's concerned about what they're wearing. Don't be worried about that. Don't be greedy for what other people have already achieved, but rather be content with what you have and work on what you have, which we'll talk about that in a minute. Work on what you have so that you can become better, and when you become better and you are able to earn more, you're able to give more. And so it blesses not only you, it blesses everybody else too. So he tells us, supply yourself, work hard, be the person who is supplying for you. Many people go out there in the world and they realize all of a sudden that they have to pay all the bills, and it scares them to death. And what do? They come back home and they live in their mother's basement. And you know what they have done? They have sold their personal freedom and who they could become for the safety and security of mother's basement. They don't get to choose what they eat, whatever the mother makes they can eat. They don't get to choose, they're not proud to bring people to their house. I mean, there's all kinds of problems with that. But you supply for you. You're responsible for you, and you will be until you die. You're responsible for providing for yourself and those, not just for yourself, but those that you have chosen to be responsible for. Never ask God to provide for you what you can provide for yourself. Get up and go get it, because God will only provide what you can't. Well, he provides food. Does he make you eat? No. He provides water. Does he make you drink? No. If you want to starve to death, you can. If you want to live a worthless life, you can. And you can look around and see people who live in squalor, without electric, without a toilet, without all kinds of things. And they'll live that way because they think they do not want to have to work because everybody owes them because they live. Well, we deserve free lunches at school. Really? Why? Why do you deserve a free lunch? Who's supposed to provide that free lunch? There's no such thing. Somebody's got to pay for that food. Who are you going to make pay for it? Well, you're going to make all those old people who don't even have children anymore pay for your free lunch or your free breakfast. I tell you what, you go into the schools, have a free breakfast, and of course, they're not concerned about giving you bacon and eggs. They'll give you fruit and all this sort of stuff. And you just see how much of it goes in the trash. Because when you get something for nothing, it is nothing to you. But when you've had to work hard for it, it means a lot to you. I remember the first car I ever bought cost me $100. And that was hard money to make. And I was so disappointed when just 3 months later, I turned it into an accordion. I lost my front teeth and didn't have a car again. And I went and saw that thing, and I was so upset because I had worked so hard on it and cleaned it and cleaned all the chrome and painted it and put some pretty paper in the back window. And you know, we used to do stuff like that in the cars. And today we get in the car, we just go. But we used to really care about them. And not just for yourself, but those you have chosen to be responsible for. The children you have, the parents that you decide you're going to care about and care for, the people that you pull under your wing and pay their bills. When you decide you're going to care for somebody, you have to decide. Now look, here's 42 practical ways to improve yourself. Now I know you can read those, and so what you probably want to do is take a picture and then blow it up. Zoom in first and take a picture and then blow it up for yourself. But there are great things like read a book every day. My goodness, the knowledge people do not get today because they do not read, they watch or they listen, but they don't read. And there are just loads of things you can get. Learn a new language, pick up a new hobby, take up a new course, create inspiration room. What a great idea that is. A room that gives you inspiration every time you walk into it. And just all kinds of ideas there. Probably my favorites isn't down there. It's that big, hairy, audacious goals. And then he puts an abbreviation, like we're going to remember the abbreviation better than the title. And what he's saying is, make goals for yourself that you are so great, you may never achieve them, because if you shoot for the stars, you may hit the moon. See how great this thought and this thinking is of you to be able to improve yourself. And then you want to be able to work on. You want to work hard. But hard work alone will not do it. You have to also live below your means so you can give. And here's the way we do it. We work hard, and yet we don't sit there and kill ourselves, because if you kill yourself, you can't even think. You're so tired. You know, like the commercials used to be on years ago. The guy would say, oh man, he gets up out of bed, he goes and washes his face, goes to the door and says, it's time to make the donuts. He opens the door and he meets himself coming in and says, I just made the donuts. Well, we have some poor power, don't we? It has nothing to do with our lights in here. I think we're just having some running on low juice out there. And hopefully we'll keep this. And then they have the 7-10-10 rule. And I'll tell you what this is, and this can help you to be able to help yourself budget. And here's the thing. When you budget, or when you live, you can live off of a smaller amount than you're actually living off of. As a general rule, when they ask people who make $100,000 a year, how much would you like to make? And they say, well, I'd really like to make $150,000. And so they go ask the people who make $150,000 a year, how much would you like to make? Man, I'd love to make $200,000 a year. And so they ask the people who make $200,000 a year, how much would you like to make? And they want more. And it's always more. And the reason why is because you live to the end of your money instead of planning. So you take 70% of what you earn to live on. This is your income. This is how you live, is on that 70%. Your electric bill, your car bill, your utilities, your insurance, whatever it may be. And you only use 70% of your income. And if you can't do that, then you try to learn how to cut down on things until you do it. It may mean that you just simply don't go out to eat. Or you're not one of those people who gets in those long lines down there at the, what's the name of that place, something Brothers? Dutch Bros, yeah. Or Starbucks or something like that. You're not down there every morning getting your $6 or $7 a latte with a shot of espresso or something. You're not drinking all those energy drinks and everything. You're going to be living off 70% of your income. That doesn't mean you're living bad, because then you've got 10% to be able to do something else with. And the first one is you're going to be able to save money. And when you save that money, things are going to happen. You're going to need new tires, your engine will blow, something happens, or you want a vacation or something like that. And you can even take envelopes and put on there the name of what you're wanting to save that money for. And boy, just stack those bills in there. When it comes in, you cash your check and you put that in there for those particular purposes. And then the second thing you want to do is take 10% of it and educate yourself better, so that you're somebody who is able to learn more, so that you become more valuable to the marketplace. The marketplace is only going to pay you what you're worth. If all you come to work with is two good hands, you're not going to be having as good of a job as a guy who can do accounting, or somebody who can rebuild an engine, or somebody who can go out and work and build houses or something like that. They're going to make a lot more money than you do. And a lot of the things that they sell you on in today's colleges, you can't make money on anyway. You'll have a degree in it, yet you'll be the person sitting there digging the ditch along with somebody else. You just have a degree while you're doing it. So you want to make sure that it's something that educates you for your betterment. And let me tell you something, YouTube has a lot of free information on there, colleges on there, college courses on there that you can study. I was listening to, what is his name? Clarence Thomas. And he was talking today on YouTube. Oh my goodness, this guy is so intelligent. And he said, you know, nobody reads books today. Where are they going to get their new ideas? Certainly isn't from movies, certainly isn't from TV, certainly isn't from news. You need to be able to go places in your mind. You need to be able to hash over laws and stuff like that by studying, reading books, and go back and get the history books of old and study and see what's really going on in this world, so you can identify why this country isn't working and why that country is. And it's kind of fascinating as we motivate ourselves towards a better life here in America, so other people in the world do the same thing. We're actually helping others. And when we partner with other people in the world, we're actually taking and evangelizing them by forcing them to come up to the standard that we live, and the standard we have is based on God's Word. Why is it we can sue people who feed us food that's no good? Well, because we have responsibilities here according to our laws, because the laws are for us, not against us. Yet you go to many countries out there, they don't care. They can lock you up for nothing. They can invent a law on the spot and throw you into a dungeon, and you'll die there. So you need to have, look at this, 70% to live on, 10% to sock away. You maybe even need to get you a bigger pig. You can take that savings and you can invest it into stocks and bonds and whatever, and it will grow. And it will make money you can invest in order to even make more money. And then you need to invest in your own education. And then guess what you can do with the rest of that 10%? You can give it away. So the last point is that you need to please God with your giving. Let's turn to Hebrews chapter 13 and see what it says in Hebrews 13. That if I can find it. 13 verse 16. Look what it says here. And do not forget to do good and to share with others, for such sacrifices are pleasing to God. Is pleased with such sacrifices. God is pleased. So you're giving, and giving is part of doing good. So he says, keep on doing good. Don't fall asleep. Don't stop doing good. Don't tire from doing good. And giving is part of being good and pleasing to God. And then he tells you to share with others. And if you share with others, you're going to have to sacrifice your time, your effort, and your money to be able to share with them. You're going to have to self-sacrifice. You're going to have to take it away from what you have worked hard for and give it to others to be able to help their life, to be able to help them out. And then lastly, giving to others pleases God. Look how wonderful that is. You've seen the people over there in Africa that have had wells drilled for them, and they can drill a well for $1,000, and yet they have to walk miles upon miles upon miles to be able to get muddy water and bring it back in buckets. And we can give $1,000 and have a new well put in that just gushes forth pure, clean water. Boy, it can't beat that. And they're just dancing around and knowing they don't have to walk so far to get their water, and when they do get their water, it's clean. You think about that. How much water an animal drinks every day, how much you need to clean your dishes and take a bath and everybody drink and all, and make your food and so on and so forth. Wow, that's a lot of work, walking miles and miles for getting it out of a mud puddle or a dirty creek or something like that. And so you can do that, and each of one must bring a gift and portion to the way the Lord God has blessed you. This pleases Him. Giving that pleases God and causes even myself to grow. Because you see, I'm going to take, and even that money that my savings is growing, I'm going to reinvest that and be able to give a portion of that. And my giving will grow. It'll make me grow. I'll even be a better person because I give. And when you're working for God, if you're for God, is working in you, giving you desire and the power to do what pleases Him. The more you give, the more excited you become about giving. Who are you? Are you a person who gives? Are you a person who's made sure that you are keeping the local church going, that you have special little things that maybe nobody knows about, but you're giving that, and you can sit there and smile about it and laugh about it in your own time and be able to know that you're doing that for God? Isn't it wonderful? And maybe many people don't even know you're doing that at all. If you're not right with God, now's the time to come forward. If you've had trouble with giving or with praying or anything, and you want to study about that or you want help with that, then come forward as we stand and sing together.